Hello, I'm Charlotte Eulette from the Celebrant Foundation and Institute of North America. Today what we're going to have is a celebration of life ceremony for Sheldon Rosenberg. This will be a celebration of life ceremony that will talk about Sheldon and his life over his 73 years with several speakers from his life, from childhood all the way up to the time where he was a grandfather. So I welcome you. Please enjoy the ceremony. Hi, everyone. Hello. As you know, I'm Charlotte Eulette, Vivian's daughter and Sheldon's daughter by marriage. And I'm also our celebrant guide today as we come together in our loving tribute to Sheldon on the 8th anniversary Yahrzeit of his passing. On behalf of my mother and Sheldon's family, I thank you all, his devoted friends here today that came from states far and wide, including Ohio, yay, California, right, Gary, California, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., actually Seattle, no, and yeah, Washington, D.C. as well, right, guys? And for those who could not be with us today, we think of them in love and in light. Now, if you please hush your cell phones once again and anything else that buzzes or beeps in the day. Thank you. 16th century English poet Ben Jonson wrote, "He was not of an age, but for all time." I take the liberty of speaking for all of us to say that these words aptly describe Sheldon, as each of us knew him in our own way, sharing our shadow with him. Sheldon certainly made an imprint on our lives. Today we remember and celebrate with happy hearts the vitality, the wit, the smile, the sparkling blue eyes, great friend, young boy, ice skater, communicator, lover, father of Robert, Gary, and Stephen, son of Abe and Rosie Rosenberg, businessman, hearty laugher, animal enthusiast, loquacious critic, Vivian's husband, art collector, grandfather of Aaron and Matthew and little Isabel and Emma, Chicagoan, beauty seeker, negotiator, peacemaker, stepdad of Dino and me, father-in-law of Ellen, Wendy, and Angela, Yiddish connoisseur, survivor, citizen of the world, fighter for the underdog, and, if nobody knew this, bellowing gospel singer, Sheldon E. Rosenberg. Yes, he was all these things and more that we don't know yet, but we'll find out today later from the very source, the people in his life that knew him. So you don't just have to take my words for the source. We have many people here that will enlighten us. We've assembled several of Sheldon's friends and family to come up and graciously enlighten us with their stories on how Sheldon, in his 73 years on planet Earth, made a lasting imprint on our lives. Now, you may all think that a celebration of life ceremony is out of the ordinary, but it's not. We're actually reviving a very old custom. Throughout history and in many cultures, it's a common practice for a community to gather together in the ancient oral tradition of sharing stories of their beloved ancestors, passing down the legacies and the important histories from one generation to the next. So just think, this is what our great-great-grandparents did long ago, and now we're doing it too. An ancient African proverb tells us that people who lack the knowledge, that people who lack the knowledge of their past are like trees without roots. And that collectively, as a society, we have a duty to honor our past so that we can learn from it. And in doing so, we celebrate the continuity of life that nourishes our very souls and that of our future generations. And so it is. On this day, we, his adoring friends, will celebrate the life of our honorable, much missed, wise elder and chieftain, Sheldon Rosenberg. All in favor, on the count of three, say, Viva Sheldon! 1, 2, 3. Viva Sheldon! That's pretty good. Okay. Sheldon gifted me a seashell that's traveled with me throughout the bumps and smooth passages of my life. It is now settled and found a home on my desk in New Jersey. I like my shell a lot. I like my shell a lot. So Mom decided to continue this tradition and gift it to each of you as a special symbol to remind us that even though we can't see Shell, he's with us all the time. I kindly ask Professor Danny Cohen, he told me not to say professor, Danny Cohen, Sheldon's adult and childhood friend, to come on up. Danny?
Okay, childhood friend, we go back to 1941. We were both 12 years old. And I had just moved in to the west side of Chicago from a small Iowa town, and was sort of a culture shock. Being in a community where I was the only Jew in the neighborhood, to come to an area where most of the population was Jewish was kind of unsettling. And one of the first people that I met was our honored absent guest today, Sheldon. He was walking down Grenshaw Street with his Tante Hani's dog, Sandy. And I was on the same street, and I noticed the dog. I went up to pet it, and Sheldon warned me that the dog bites, but we became friends when the dog didn't bite me. We graduated from elementary school together, and our friendship went on for the next almost 60 years. And I'm sitting next to Gary over here. Charlotte mentions Sheldon, ice skater, and Gary shakes his head. But Sheldon did go ice skating with me on the Douglas Park Lagoon during the winter time, and in the summertime we used to go rowing there. Sheldon introduced me to a great deal of Chicago. We used to get on the Roosevelt Road streetcar, take it to the end of the line near the Field Museum and what is now known as the museum campus, and we would spend very nice Saturdays and sometimes Sundays going through the various museums. You began to get a eclectic view of the world by looking at all of the knowledge that was contained in the museums. When we graduated from elementary school, we went to separate high schools, but we still kept in touch, seeing each other several times a week, usually on weekends. One of our things that we would always enjoy doing is on either Friday night or Saturday night, we would walk to one of the movie palaces. He had no special liking for any kind of movie. He liked them all. But then we have to come up with the idea. We both graduated high school. He went on to Roosevelt University. It was somewhat convenient for him because the university was fairly close to where Abe had Ace Looseleaf, and Sheldon worked part-time for his father. It's where he learned most of his business savvy. I went to a community college, and after the first year, Abe asked me if I would like to come to work for him part-time, and so I transferred to Roosevelt University, and the two of us graduated from Roosevelt University in 1950. Prior to that, we were under the idea that we might be drafted, so we both joined the National Guard. I think Charlotte has a photo of Sheldon in a uniform, and she asked me about it, and I had forgotten all about the National Guard that we were in for 2 years. He stayed in the National Guard. I made the mistake of transferring to graduate school and then was drafted. But there were a number of things. For example, we all know Sheldon as being a connoisseur of wine. If you've ever been over to his house, there's always a new wine that he would bring out for you to taste. That goes back to our freshman year in college, where the two of us collaborated on a term paper on the history of wine. Sheldon got an A in it and became an aficionado of wine, and it became one of his life's passions. I learned after our term paper that I was allergic to alcohol. So my taste of wine was not quite the same as Sheldon's. We also know Sheldon as being a very exemplary connoisseur of art. And that comes about because of the proximity of Roosevelt University to the Art Institute. We both worked part-time at Ace Loose Leaf, which was on Wells Street in Madison, and Roosevelt University, as you might know, is on Congress in Michigan. And so walking to and from work, we oftentimes, either together or singly, we would stop at the Art Institute. And this was a fairly interesting stop for Sheldon, where he began to appreciate art. We know that he has a fairly fine collection of art, and that comes about through an interest. He was quite happy for some time, pleased with the 3 boys that came along. I would go over to the house occasionally to talk to him, occasionally for dinner. Sometimes we would go out on our own, but the conversations at that point usually centered around family and when I was going to get married. Finally, I did get married. Sheldon and my wife became fairly good friends. I was with him when he went through the divorce. And coming with Vivian, it was really a much happier Sheldon at that point. And although I wasn't involved in his business affairs, we would meet at various times during the year for dinner parties, either at my house or sometimes going out to various restaurants and so forth. My relationship with Sheldon is sort of a very important relationship in my life because it sort of made me, think of a career. We all know Sheldon as being well-versed in practically everything, and I had to keep up with it. And the only way I could surpass Sheldon is by becoming a college professor. Okay, enough said. It was a wonderful 60-year relationship. I'm quite proud to have been a friend, and I treasure his memory. Thank you.
Give me a kiss. Oh. I asked Mr. and Mrs. Desmond and Jean LaPlace to come on up. Okay, she'll be your fan in the sideline.
I'm usually the front man. Okay. First of all, I should say that what a tough act to follow going on after Bob Cohen. Oh, good, Gene. Would you like to start for me? No. So after coming out after Bob and Charlotte, I feel I'm sort of here to sweep up. I don't know quite what I could add, but Charlotte stole most of my material, and Bob Cohen finished me off. So, but I didn't know Sheldon as long as certainly Bob did. Sheldon and I met in the late 70s and early 80s, probably through business. But before I get into that, I should mention that Charlotte told me that we had only 2 minutes for our remarks. Vivian said I could have 15 minutes. So somewhere in between, my comments are really going to be quite short and are should run maybe about 3 minutes for those that may be interested. Both my wife and I, Jean and I, are very pleased to participate in this celebration of life for Sheldon. Because of the 3-minute limit, I had to cut Jean out completely.
That's what he thinks.
But I am really going to speak for both of us. As I say, I met Sheldon in the late 70s or early 80s, and as I'm sure like everyone in this room, I liked him right away on the first meeting. We met through business. I was in the office products business. My company was ACCO, A-C-C-O, and Sheldon, of course, with Ace Loose Leaf, and then I knew it also as Sales Tools. And so he and his father, Abe, at that time focused a great deal on the relationship with Sears. That was a main contact of theirs. And Sheldon was also one of the first to also focus on minority businesses. He was very interested in that and accomplished a lot in that area. And as Bob mentioned, and I think maybe Charlotte touched on too, business was not Sheldon's first love. But even though it wasn't, he still excelled at it, like he seemed to excel at everything. As this Bob's discussion, the scope of his knowledge is just mind-boggling. Sheldon understood people, and consequently, he could deal effectively with anyone. I was always so impressed with that. Sheldon had so much knowledge, as Bob mentioned, in so many areas, and Jean and I didn't fully realize that until we started to get together socially with him and with Vivian. We spent many wonderful evenings at their apartment, enjoying conversation, and Vivian's, of course, delicious dinners, which everybody in the room seems to refer to at one time or another. Anyway, Sheldon was a true Renaissance man. He could talk to a friend or to a stranger, as Bob mentioned, on almost any subject. I mean, I think in terms of business, travel, art, politics, history, and on and on. And when he died, my wife and I said, what a terrible loss to the world of so much knowledge, to think that great knowledge was taken away from the world. And of course, Sheldon had a wonderful sense of humor. He could be such a funny guy, but with a dry wit. He wasn't the ho-ho-ho type of humor, but he had ability to come up with a humorous comment at just the right time. And as tough as Sheldon could be when necessary, he could also let you down gracefully if he liked you. Otherwise, look out. I think back on a couple of times on trips when Jean and I bought what we thought was some wonderful art. Well, Sheldon would look at it and politely tell us, quote, it was not so hot. But what a wonderful knowledge and appreciation of beauty and art. Finally, Sheldon's best gift to us is our ongoing relationship and friendship with Vivian, which has gone on for all these years since Sheldon passed away. So we thank Sheldon for that. And my 3 minutes are up, and thanks to Vivian and Charlotte. And Jean, would you like to say something?
And as the politicians say, I'm Jean Laplace, and I approve of this message. I like that
one. Now I ask Mr. Leon Jackson to please come on up.
Thank you, Charlotte. And Vivian, Gary, Bob. Steve's not here. Okay. I'm delighted to be here. I'm really delighted to be here. The only thing that's wrong with this gathering is Sheldon is not here. I met Sheldon almost 35 years ago, probably give or take 30 days. It was 1973, and I was working for Xerox Corporation with this burning desire to go into business. I'd looked at every kind of business, from wanting to buy a tractor trailer to pull steel from Gary to McDonald's. That's the one I should have taken. But I met a guy, Peter Ross, they had just started a new initiative. The former Secretary of Defense was over at the Office of Economic Opportunity, Mr. Rumsfeld, and they had developed over time an initiative, actually the Nixon administration. It finally started to catch fire in the 70s. And part of the goal was to support minority interests into business. Now, other thing we have to keep in mind, that's 35 years ago. Minority then was simply a polite way of saying black people entered into business. And there was all kinds of things going on. And I remember talking to Peter, and he said, we're negotiating with this guy for his father's business. So I don't think the deal's going to happen, because Sheldon was probably being Sheldon, negotiating hard. He said, but, maybe that might be a fit here. I don't think he meant it, but he did, in fact, introduce me to Sheldon. And we talked for about 2 hours. But about 30 minutes or 40 minutes into that conversation, we knew we were on to something. We knew we could get along. And we talked, and finally, at about hour 45 minutes, I said, Sheldon, if this deal doesn't work out, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to come to work with you. I'm going to come to work for you. I didn't know it at the time, but that kind of sealed the deal, because 6 months later, I had left Xerox, to the absolute consternation of everybody, to join a little company doing about $1 million a year. And I was doing quite well at Xerox. But it's one of the most important decisions and one of the best decisions I ever made. And it was a good decision because it transformed my life. It really transformed my life by providing me with not only the opportunity, but the tools to do an awful lot of things that I've done since that time. And as I look back on that, I said, what happened? Well, what happened is that for the first 5 or 6 years, I saw Sheldon virtually every day. And the one thing that I remember most about Sheldon and seeing him every day is that he started every day with his father. He would pick Mr. Rose up every morning and drive him to work, like clockwork. The only time that didn't happen when Sheldon went to Florida for business, or Mr. Rose was in Florida because it was winter. I watched that relationship, and I also had the opportunity to talk to someone that had known Sheldon since he was a child. That was Louis Bodian, who worked for Sheldon. I guess his entire career was working for Rosenbergs. And what I didn't know that Sheldon would not Sheldon, but Louis would fill in. And I have yet to be more impressed by a son's devotion to his parent, to his father, which I believe set the stage for the other Sheldon that I observed. Family. Family, as he defined it, was just so important. I remember during that 35 years, I think Bob was in college and Stephen was in high school. I just remember the time of the day where he would stop everything off when one called that he would, it was central in his life, the family aspect. We also spent, aside from seeing each other, we spent a lot of time, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I was with Sheldon when we met Des Laplace, because there was something that we were sourcing for Sears. And we met Des, you guys were on Northwest Highway at that first meeting. But there's a number of situations. There are a number of people in this room that I was with Sheldon when I met. But the thing I remember most about him as well is that he was a realist. He was an absolute realist. I think he saw the world as it really was. And despite that, he was an optimist because he knew that he could make a difference. And he did make a difference. I know he made a difference with his sons because they are all productive and doing things. But the difference that he made a difference with me, because the difference that he made with me is because I was interested in business, but also probably exhibited some of that sociologist aspect that we don't see. We saw it, but we didn't recognize how deep it was. Like most of you here, I knew a particular aspect, but he had that ability to think that you feel that you were the most important person in his life because he gave you his undivided. And there was some time when he wasn't polite, when he said that it didn't quite match up. Sometimes he said, that's crap. Okay? And he did that often. But the thing that I remember again is how, and as I think about the times we're in now, how I would love to be able to sit in a room like this and have Sheldon give us an analysis of what's going on. Not only where it is, but where it's going. Because in the times that I knew him, doing some of those rambling conversations, some of these things he predicted. He had said one time that we will reach a time where you better have a barrel of dried beans in your basement, or you better have some water, and then make sure you have some cash. But nevertheless, he made an impression on me. He made an impression on often a lot of people that I've been fortunate enough to meet. And at the end of the day, when I remember him, I just remember that the impression that he had, that he made on me, how I felt about him, how I believe he felt about me. And I believe that most of you in the room would have that same feeling because he was genuine in that. Because if he liked you, you knew it. And if he didn't like you, you knew that too. But I loved Sheldon for who he was, not just with me, but for who he was with other people, some people that had nothing, and how he treated them, that he was able to raise people's spirit just with words and with gestures and just the fact that he paid attention. I miss him. Thank you.
Sheldon loved music from all around the world. Being with Mom, who he called his little Shepsula, which means my little lamb. And he acquired a taste for different kinds of music. Of course, he loved classical music, which we're going to have our Dimitris Marinos and Andrea Georgias. Am I saying your last name right? I'm trying. World-renowned musicians, and they're going to play at this midpoint of the ceremony. They're going to play a little piece of Beethoven, and when they're done, they're going to adjust their instruments because Sheldon loved Greek revolutionary music. If you don't know it, you know it now. Hit it. And now, a beautiful Hatzidakis piece, right? Okay. Okay, everybody, we're going to go into a couple more speakers, and then we will feast. So if everybody would take their seats, and I kindly ask Mr. Nick Lambros to come on up.
Hello, everybody. Talk about a tough act to follow. I am, my name is Nick Lambros, and I was asked if I'd like to say a few words this afternoon, and I felt truly honored. Thank you, Vivian. Where's she? Where's Viv? You are? Hey. Thank you. I remember in high school, one of the courses that I had was Speech 101, and I thought to myself, God, what a waste of time. Why does anybody need a course in learning how to speak? You just get up, you talk. Should be easy. After all, I'm Greek, and we invented speaking, didn't we? I mean, come on. Anyway, the course outlined on how the function of a good speaker is to highlight the reasons for the occasion, that we have all come here today to somehow express the sentiments held by everybody involved and to arouse the audience with some inspiring speech. Well, you're not going to hear that kind of speech today. We're going to leave that up to our to John McCain and Barack Obama. They seem to be doing a really good job. So my words today, though they're on paper, just outlined, truly come from the heart. I met Sheldon about 30 years ago through my friends Vivian and her children Charlotte and Dino, who have known me since I was 5 or 6 years old. And in our life's journey, we all meet all kinds of people. Once in a while, though, we meet somebody who somehow leaves us different and makes us different, who changes us for the better. And for me, that was Sheldon. It's difficult to try and come up with, over the span of years, things that you remember about somebody. And but I want to compare him to this quirky little mechanical handheld puzzle that was popular back in the late 70s when I first met him, called the Rubik's Cube. And it was this square puzzle. Many of you are familiar, but for those who might not be, a square little puzzle. It had 6 sides, and each side was covered with 9 stickers that had 6 different colors: white, yellow, orange, red, blue, and green. And for the puzzle to be solved, each face of this square, of this cube, had to be a solid color. It was complicated, and it was difficult to master, and challenging and interesting. And you'd put the puzzle down, and you'd study it, and you'd look at it, and you'd twist it, and you'd turn it. And it became more challenging and frustrating at times, but you just couldn't put the puzzle down. You wanted to figure it out. You wanted to learn how it worked. And this was the challenge, to learn from the puzzle, because every time you thought you matched the colors just right on one side, you'd flip it over, and waiting for you was something completely different. And Sheldon was like that puzzle. He was intricate and complicated and multifaceted and colorful and challenging and inspiring, and at the same time he was fun because it was a game. He had this unique ability to make the complicated, though, seem simple at times. I learned a lot from him. He was, of course, as we all know, an awesome storyteller and a great motivator and an amazing resource, as we all have heard. You know, there's been a rumor flying around for years that the internet, that Al Gore claimed that he invented the internet. Al didn't. I really think Sheldon did, because he was like this bucket of information, just endless information. I've been privileged to have crossed paths with him and honored that he considered me his friend. He informed, he inspired, he was creative, he was a gracious host, He was generous and kind and compassionate, but was also straightforward, a no-nonsense kind of guy with that quick wit that on occasion he would unleash, and basically he would unleash it. He called it his lightning in a bottle, he referred to it. And he reserved it, of course, for only the most deserving. He would say about being I remember certain things that they just stick in my head, and to this day I kind of occasionally use them. He would say about being self-employed that it's always nicer signing the back of the check rather than the front of the check. I called them Sheldonisms. Another Sheldonism, which I live by daily, is he said, know what you know what you don't know, and what you don't know, surround yourself with those who do. I miss his friendship, his quick wit and humor. He always had a joke or two to share, and he had this high-pitched laugh that just filled the room. And so I want to leave you with one of Sheldon's jokes that I remember. And it went like this. And picture Sheldon, of course, saying it. He did. Well, in any case, this one he just kind of told one day, and he said a young Jewish man excitedly tells his mother he's fallen in love and that he's going to get married. He says, just for fun, Mom, I'm going to bring over 3 women, and you try and guess which one I'm going to marry. The mother agrees. The next day he brings these 3 beautiful women into the house and sits them down on the couch, and they chat for a while. And he then says, okay, Mom, guess which one I'm going to marry. She immediately replies, the one on the right. That's amazing, Mom. You're right. How did you know? The Jewish mother paused and replied, I don't like her. Thank you. Thank you, Vivian.
I'd like to ask if maybe Sheldon's grandsons would like to come up in an impromptu thing. Okay.
I'm Aaron, and this is Matt, Sheldon's grandkids. We were talking the other day about Sheldon, and one thing that's stuck out for us was we were thinking about when we were little, and we'd go over to Viv and Sheldon's house, their apartment, and we'd spend the night every now and then, and we'd wake up in the morning, and Grandpa would be cooking up oatmeal. Every time, always oatmeal. You know, I mean, it must have been at least a dozen times. Then we'd
We
go.
would just wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start making this. It was like,
Yeah, right. He woke up way before us and started making this oatmeal. And it was like this thing he had where he had to wake up and make this, what he called the world-class oatmeal. Oh, yeah. And it was really, really delicious oatmeal, but for him it was like you could tell that it meant something. And it was like an expression of his love to wake up really early and make this delicious oatmeal for us. And he was always talking about how it wasn't first-class oatmeal. No, it was better. It was world-class oatmeal. And it was like this thing where every single time we saw him, it was, what's better than first class? World class. So it was just this thing about how much, you know, this love he had for family. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go, just let you know that I'd like to read this letter to you. It comes from across the pond, my mother's relatives and my Kathy's relatives, of course, and many relatives in here because there's a lot of Cappuses here, are also from the University of Athens, and they're professors there. And they emailed this letter for me to read to all of you, so it came from across the pond. Good morning from Greece. Okay, I'll put the little accent in so you'll know. We would very much like to be with you this moment to commemorate our beloved Sheldon. People pass away when we forget them. For us, Shell is alive because we're not forgetting him. Perhaps right now he's listening and he is smiling in his own unique way. When we met 25 years ago, we were impressed by his knowledge of the Greek history and his admiration of our ancient philosophers. In every trip to Greece, he would visit the archaeological sites and museums. He went to Delphi. In Apollo's sanctum, he bent down to drink the waters at Castalia, the Castalia fountain, rather, and listened to the Muses' song. He climbed Mount Pelion and searched for the wise centaurs. He loved contemporary Greece as well, its sun, its white islands, and he was enjoying like a young boy the beaches, picking up petals and pebbles and seashells. We're not forgetting the way he received us when we came to Chicago. Like Zeus, the ancient god of hospitality, he opened up his arms and his house even though he had serious illness issues. We will always remember how he treated us with presents and surprises, always finding ways to make us enjoy them even more. Our strong personality, witty and formidable man, most precious asset, he used to say, the 3 precious stones, my 3 sons. We must remember, though, the next to a great man stands a worthy wife, and that's his partner, his and beloved Vivian. Sheldon, when Vivian comes nowadays to Greece, she commemorates you all the time and with so many memories. She misses you and she cries. We remember together your words, your every move, your jokes. We would like to finish this by making a wish. May we all remember Sheldon and his presence on earth be the guide to our own lives. Love, Hari, Eleni, Yorgi, and Sula. Now, without further ado, the ancient poet Rumi teaches that lovers don't just meet when they are destined for one another. The touch that awakens may be that of your beloved, reaching across the centuries to kiss you once again and to remind you that you are always together to the end of time. I ask my Sheldon's beloved to come on up and lead with the toast. I'm crying because she put so much energy into this, so I'm so proud of her. And I love her. Here's Ma.
Good job. I wanted to see if it's good morning or afternoon. Good afternoon. I like to thank you, all of you, for joining I and our family to share Sheldon's life. Σας ευχαριστούμε που μας τιμήσατε. This is a special day for a very special person. He was indeed special. This past March, Sheldon and I would have been married 25 years. As someone told me that Sheldon died too soon, too young. Sheldon was a partner to my life. It was very difficult for all these years, 8 years now, for me to share my days alone, and it still is. And I want to tell you, I miss him very much. Some of you knew Sheldon. Some of you did not know Sheldon, but you did of me speaking about Sheldon. Sheldon was a wonderful husband, a very good friend to me. and he was a teacher. I learned a lot from Sheldon about life. He was loving, caring, generous, and I want to tell you something, he was always happy. Happier than me, and I'm pretty happy. He was always happy. Before we got married, Sheldon told me, I am the only child and I have two parents. And I want you to know, when we get married, I will be good to you, but my parents come first. I admire him and I respected him for it. It was okay with me because I felt that we, as being ethnic, Greek, immigrants, whatever, we do think to take care of our parents. And in return, when my parents were not well, my father was sick, he was very, very good to my parents and also my entire family. As you also heard even from Greece, that they really loved Sheldon. He was very good, a great family person. I think that Sheldon would like to remember him as he was. How was Sheldon? I think that Sheldon he loved his home. He loved to have dinner at the house, making the world-class oatmeal. He loved to have friends over and engaged a conversation over a good meal and a good bottle of wine. As Danny said, that he was a connoisseur in wine. I haven't learned it yet. I don't know. I call up people and I said, what's Shiraz? What is Merlot? I know when I drink it if I like it or not. He really loved to eat too. I like to mention that Sheldon left me. He's passed away and he left me with some wonderful friends. As you can see, as I can see, that you're all here, and you're here because you are my special friends, and you are precious to me because it makes life to go much easier when are you alone like I am, or somebody like me. So, and I am a very lucky woman that he left me with great friends, with a loving family from my side and his side. He also left me with, he has 3 wonderful sons, which I have a relationship with them even before Sheldon married me. They're wonderful and I'm very happy. And I must tell you, those 2 grandchildren who just spoke about the oatmeal, I grew up with them. I used to race when I could run. I can't run anymore. Down at the Centennial Park, and I did grow up with Aaron and Matthew, and I love them. I feel like they're my own. I love my Dino has 2 children, but I have lived longer with these kids than my own son's children. And now, I'd like for you to raise your glass and all drink and all have a drink to Sheldon. Lahain, to life, Sigian in Greek, and as long as I live, Sheldon lives on. And now, if Sheldon were to say, you know what, let's eat. So, please go ahead and join me then. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Okay. Thanks to all of you.